Now that we just completed 2 chapters of assembly lessons, let's have some fun with the software and build the assembly you see on the screen. This assembly is called the linkage arm assembly, and this assembly, along with all of the part files, can be found in your working files folder. Now this assembly consists of 5 unique parts. Let's take a look at them in the Feature Manager design tree and the graphics area. The first part is the base plate, followed by the axle, and then 2 5-hole plates. Then we have a couple sleeves that holds everything together. Notice the sleeves. And then we have 2 3-hole plates, a couple more sleeves, another axle, and this is all held together with several mates. So what I'm going to do in this lesson is I'm going to get you started on the first couple steps. I would then recommend that you pause the video and then follow those steps in a new SolidWorks assembly. Once you complete those steps, return to the video for the next set of directions. So let's begin. I am going to start a new assembly by selecting New, Assembly. Okay. And then I'm going to browse for the base plate. So this is where you're going to go into your working files folder and find these components. I'll select base plate and then open. The property manager opens and notice base plate is at my cursor. So I'm just going to pick a point in the graphics area and it's positioned. Now what I want you to do is insert the axle and then position that axle in this hole in the base plate. And keep in mind that axle needs to be centered in this direction here. So pause the video, insert the base plate, insert the axle, and then mate those 2 components. Now, I am assuming that you mated those 2 components. And again, there are a couple different ways you can do that. Let me talk about the couple different ways or the few different approaches for mating the axle to the base plate and keeping it centered within this block of the base plate. I am going to select Insert Component. I am going to browse for the axle and then select Open. For now, I'm going to place it off to the left-hand side in this assembly so we can discuss the various methods for mating these 2 components, keeping in mind that we want this axle to be centered in this rectangular block. Now, one mate that we could do is the width mate, and that would be a good choice. Another option would be the distance mate. Not such a good choice because most likely you would be applying a distance from the end face of the axle to this face on the base plate. So I'm not too keen on using the distance mate. Right now, the width mate looks like a very good choice. Another choice would be is to mate the planes, and that's the approach I'm going to take. So whether you mated the planes or use the width mate, those are both good options. So let's go to mate. I am going to expand the tree, expand the base plate, and then I am looking for the appropriate plane, which would be the right plane. And now I will expand the axle, and it looks like the right plane on the axle is also the correct plane. I'll apply a coincident mate and then accept it. Now the axle is centered left to right. Notice though, it's not inside of the hole. So that means we need to add a concentric mate. So I'm going to select those 2 features, add the concentric mate. Now before I select the green check mark, do you want to lock rotation? Is that important in this design? I am going to leave it unchecked and I will accept the concentric mate. So hopefully you mated the pin with a concentric mate and then used either a coincident between the planes or the width mate. Let's move on to the next step. Now what I want you to do is to insert the 2 5-hole plates. Now these plates need to be positioned over each side of the pin, and the face of the plate must be in contact with this face and this face of the base plate. So let me go back to my finished assembly so you can see what I am referring to. Notice how this 5-hole plate and this 5-hole plate are contacting this face and this face of the base plate. Once you mate those two 5-hole plates, then I want you to add a mate which allows these two plates to move together. What do I mean by that? Well, let me suppress the angle mate. Notice when I move the one 5-hole plate, the second 5-hole plate moves with it. So again, pause the video, insert the two 5-hole plates and the appropriate mates. Okay, once again, I assume you have the 5-hole plates added and mated and the two 5-hole plates move together. Let me go back to the assembly I am building. I'll insert components. Now, one thing that we can do when we browse for the 5-hole plate, if we pin the property manager open, this allows us to insert multiple components, just like I did here. I'll close out of the property manager, and now I am going to add the first of the mates. The most obvious mate would be the coincident mate. I'll mate the face of this 5-hole bracket to the face of the base plate. So I'll select this face. Along with this one, add the coincident mate, and then I'll select the face of the hole and the face of the pin and add a concentric mate. Now over here, I can do the same thing, but I am going to do it through a smart mate just to try a different method. So in order to apply a smart mate, I must close out of this property manager. And remember, we need to hold down the Alt key when I select this circular edge and then this circular edge on the pin. Notice my smart mate graphic will apply both a concentric and a coincident mate. I'll release the left mouse button and the two mates are applied. Now, how do we get these two 5-hole plates to move together? There's a couple options for that. You can either add a coincident mate or a parallel mate between the two 5-hole plates. So I am going to select mate once again. I am going to clear this window. I will select the top face of this 5-hole plate and then the same face of this 5-hole plate. I can either add coincident or parallel. I'll accept it, and notice as we move one 5-hole plate, the other one moves with it. So let's go ahead and close out of mates, fit this to the screen, and conclude this part 1 of testing your skills, and then we'll finish up this assembly in part 2.